Hey everybody, how you doing? And for those of you joining me who were on for my interview with Bay Area Panthers President Scott McKibben, thanks a lot, very much. I'm moving this up quite a bit to get this out of the way. This is a big night. Among other things, the Braves in Atlanta here are one win away from a trip to the World Series. And then, of course, there's Thursday night football, and well, there's just a lot going on that, well, involves the media space that I've created, either directly or indirectly. So let me start by reading this letter that I prepared and sent already to the mayor of Oakland, Libby Schaaf, her press person, and a number of Oakland City Council members, members of the Alameda County Board of Supervisors, and Mike Jacob, who is the lawyer with the Oakland Longshoremen and who has been on this show a number of times. But I wanted to make sure that since I didn't have the contact information for everyone, and I intended to make the email public anyway, that I would go ahead and continue the process of making it public because it addresses a number of concerns I have that I've explained in different ways, but I haven't had the opportunity to encapsulate in this way just yet. So here I am doing that. When it starts is the letter, which is actually reprinted in the text to this live stream, which will become the text to the blog post on Oakland News Now momentarily after, or actually as this is being done. But it goes like this. Dear Mayor Schaaf, I hope this finds you well. I just read the latest City of Oakland website Howard Terminal entry, and it reads as tantamount to a lie. I am so sorry, but that term sadly fits. The reasons are simple. First, EIDL law does allow for Howard Terminal infrastructure financing, or I should say more clearly, the law that was created for enhanced infrastructure development does allow for financing of Howard Terminal infrastructure. And the money that was to be paid to the Oakland Athletics for infrastructure is covered in SB 293 Skinner. It is also a basic subsection of the law. And that needs to be stated because sometimes it is forgotten. But the bottom line is that it hasn't been done. I will continue to read what I'm explaining to you regarding the letter as well. Let me continue here. The bottom line is tax increment financing can be used to pay for Howard Terminal infrastructure. Your post dated October 20th, 2021 implies otherwise. Thus, getting the county share of tax increment financing or TIF revenue will cause the county to essentially help pay for Howard Terminal. That is a fact. Also, there will not be the $65 million in tax revenue from development at Howard Terminal simply because there is no actual financing plan or developer partner to build the claimed additional land use. You know, the combination of uses that is supposed to equal 12 billion in assessed value. You cannot guarantee what you do not have. If the development agreement calls for the office structures to be built and land uses, does it? We don't know right now. Who pays when they're not? What's the punishment for not acting? And how can you make someone spend money they do not have. And that leads me to this. The Oakland A's are not shown in any document to be expected to pay property tax on the ballpark, since the ballpark itself will clock in at north of $1 billion in assessed value when it's finished. That's a substantial loss of potential tax increment revenue. If it's matched with an additional $1 billion of assessed property value at base year one, over a 45-year period, and at a rate of growth of assessed value of 4%, the Jack London Square historic average is roughly 6.5%. That comes to $1.6 billion in tax increment financing revenue. And that is without using the base year tax divisions. If you add that, we would see $2.6 billion. In other words, the way the law is designed, the taxing agencies, the city of Oakland, the county of Alameda, BART, AC Transit, the school district, the flood control district, which is EB MUD, would continue to collect the assessed value payments as they were before the tax increment financing zone was established. There would be the amounts be fixed at that base year, and they would continue to collect those even after the tax increment financing district goes online, is activated. Now, the city could have negotiated with each taxing agency early on and gotten that too. Some say, well, you can't talk to the school, or you can't get the school district's money. Not getting the school district's money does not mean you're not prohibited from making a deal with the school district. The law does not prohibit such an arrangement. If an organization, a municipal organization, is want to do one. But I digress. The bottom line is there are two ways to take the money. Either just the increment or the increment plus the base. If you take the increment plus the base, that becomes, rather than $1.6 billion, $2.6 billion. We continue, and I wrote this in the letter. Remember, I made my own Howard Terminal spreadsheet for anyone to use. In other words, I just gave you a tax increment financing revenue estimate without the other building projects. This includes what we know will be built, the estimate that I gave you, the ballpark, plus an additional $1 billion in assessed value. Since there's no larger TIF zone used, as the athletics wanted at one point, we have to engineer the building of that additional $1 billion in assessed value. Without it, we are looking at $800 million in TIF revenue over that 45-year period, assuming 4% rate of growth of assessed value. And that's it. And that's it. That boils down to a top-end $400 million bond issue, and $200 million of that for the A's if you're going to help the A's pay for infrastructure. So the Howard Terminal project needs a development partner now. Otherwise, those land use targets will not be met. The city of Oakland must find that partner now. Do a symposium to sell that to interested parties, as I did for Mayor Brown's 10K project. In closing, your so-called consultants did not calculate tax increment financing revenue scenarios. The September 24th Center Urban document does not show that at all. If you think so, if you think it does, then it's clear you don't know what taxing and financing revenue estimates look like or why, and are just winging it. Please stop. And let me be more clear, and I'll put up the Center Urban document in a moment. Ms. Mayor, There's no excuse for the continued malpractice that has gone on. And it is clear that fear of public reaction, to the level of subsidy has guided your actions rather than a detailed understanding of what the law permits, such that you can sell the public on the project with the subsidy. Your actions in using this approach, Ms. Mayor, are dangerous and could wind up stalling the Howard Terminal project via a lawsuit. My fear is that you are creating such a climate, and it's spurring me to act. That fear is spurring me to act yet again by making this video. Please stop the unnecessary smoke and mirrors to this much needed project. I urge the county to get behind it, but that's no reason to try to bamboozle Alameda County supervisors. That's what's going on right now, and has been the case since 2019. That was when one of your assistant city administrators said that she and I should have lunch after not allowing me to talk with Chinatown town hall attendees about tax increment financing revenue from Howard Terminal at Councilmember Nikki Fortunato Bass, now Oakland City Council President's event on November 20th of 2019. I provided the video below. Best regards, Zenny Abraham, CEO, Zenny62 Media, founder and former director of the Oakland Alameda County Sports Commission and the Super Bowl 39 bidding committee. Now, I wrote all that, and I'll now show you what spurred me to produce that. And right now, and it is here. As I pull it up, it's called The Facts versus Claims. And rather than read the entire document to you, I'm going to scroll down and show you the part that I'm referring to. Also, I referred to the Infrastructure Financing District as the EIDL. It's not EIDL. The reason why I accidentally put that in there is because I've been working with the SBA on an EIDL matter, actually an extension. And that constant work filtered into mine. And not only that, I've written about the problems others have had with the SBA and EIDLs. And so it was still stuck in my head. Rather than writing EIFD, I wrote EIDL. So that's where that came from. It's just a slip of the brain, if you will. But I digress. This page writes, the City of Oakland has asked Alameda County to take action and express their intent to opt in to the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District, EIFD, over the waterfront ballpark district at Howard Terminal. This will provide critical funding for the project to support affordable housing, parks, and other public benefits, all paid for by revenues generated by the project. A project of this magnitude generates a lot of interest and discussion by various stakeholders, and it is essential to inform subsequent action with accurate information. Then it goes on to read, the Alameda County Board of Supervisors will hold a regular meeting on October 26th, and their requested participation in the Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District for the proposed Oakland Waterfront Ballpark District at Howard Terminal, EIFD, is to be on the agenda. And then they have the link for information on how they access the meeting. And then they explain that below are factual corrections, as they write, to false claims recently made. And these don't address or anything that I've come up with. I don't recognize them. But I want to address them anyway. For example, it says, is the AH project a bad deal for Oakland Alameda County residents? Which I don't think it is. And then it asks, this is one of the questions I was asked of them, is the county being asked to support a private project that will divert resources away from critical programs and services including public health and safety. And the city's response is the proposed project will add and not divert resources for critical public health and safety services. It will create 65 million additional one-time revenues for county services and more than 5 million every year in additional annual revenues for healthcare, early childhood education, and homelessness. And they claim that these are funds that will not be available but for the development of the proposed project. Additionally, the proceeds will pay for desperately needed affordable housing, public parks, and public infrastructure. Now, here's the problem, and it's a big one. First of all, the throw off that they quote in terms of taxes regarding county services and regarding the revenues every year are based on a list of expected development. That's what I was getting to in the letter. But the A's don't have a development partner or the financing lined up for that. It's a wish list that forms this land use grid. That's it. Note that even though the Athletics have talked about the total wish list, as I call it, being 12 billion, they never produced for anybody, which should be, since it's in a tax increment financing zone, the tax increment financing revenue, which I calculated at $9 billion. But you never heard that. They never brought it out. And no one ever asked why. Just one example of the many that there are of how sloppy this has been done. Here's another one. Is Alameda County being pressured to commit funding the Oakland A's project before the city of Oakland has even reached a final agreement with a team and the EIR? And it says the county's commitment is needed in order to reach a final agreement on financing plan and proposed project. And it says without that commitment, the project will not move forward. That is factually wrong. The project can move forward. There's nothing in the law that says it can't move forward, particularly if you're with respect to the enhanced infrastructure financing district approach without the county. You have to want to use the county's share of tax increment. Period. End of story. Period. End of story. There is nothing in SB 293 Skinner that says otherwise. And that is the legislation that Oakland Athletics President Dave Cavall and Oakland city staff, led by the mayor, who was with Dave in Sacramento to fight for the legislation. That's the work that they did. That is the end result. The end result is not such that they have to have the county's agreement, period, to move forward, full stop. That's what this implies. That's not true at all. Again, there is nothing in that law that was written by the same people I mentioned that states that. Nothing. All right? It says that, it goes on to say here that without that commitment, the project will not move forward. Again, I'm saying that's wrong. And then it continues that the city and the port, through actions of the city council and the board of port commissioners, have both made public, non-binding commitments to the project, and the city is simply asking the county to do the same. Okay, so the EIFD would not be actually formed until all regulatory approvals are granted, including all environmental approvals, and that's true. But the environmental approvals do not call for the county's financial involvement at all. That's a separate, land use and financial involvement are a separate issue here. He goes on to read, will taxpayers be left on the hook for the $400 million for on-site infrastructure exclusively benefiting the A's private development? This says the project is paid for with but for taxes. The EIFD does not raise taxes, divert existing taxes, or utilize any tax revenues other than those generated on site by the project itself. That's true, but this should explain that it's using tax increment financing, which is a way of directing property taxes that will be used for a bond issue to pay the A's back for the infrastructure improvements that have to be done, including for the reasons of sea level rise. That's what this should say. It does not say that. In other words, my point is not playing it straight away has been a consistent issue I have had with how this project has been governed over 2 years plus now. And it goes on to read that furthermore, the taxpayer in this case is the developer, the A's. It is the developer's increased property taxes resulting from development of the site itself that will be captured and used to fund the following public benefits: 18.3 acres of public parks, 450 affordable housing units on site, 1.5 mile extension of the Bay Trail, remediation of existing environmental contamination, sea level rise protection through 2100, excuse me. Then it says, do the terms rely on the promise? Okay, let me stop right there. Again, the development that's talked about here, there's no guarantee it's going to be built. Only the ballpark. And there's nothing that says that the A's are going to pay property taxes on their privately financed ballpark. That is a giant issue that spurred me to write the letter. Because if you read the sentence where it starts furthermore, and then it reads the taxpayer is the developer, it says the developers increase property taxes resulting from the development of the site itself. That means the site itself, but it doesn't say the ballpark and the site itself. Because it begs the question, what if these other projects are never built? If the A's are not paying a property tax, then they can't start the tax increment financing engine. And if that were the case, as I lay it out in my letter, at $1 billion, just north of $1 billion in assessed value, the ballpark itself would generate $800 million in assessed value, of which roughly 50% could be used for a bond issue, or $400 million, and then $200 million of that to the A's. That's not enough to pay for the infrastructure. The infrastructure itself would eat up the total bond capacity at that level. And that's why it's important to have a $2 billion base year assessed value rather than $1 billion, and a larger set of projects that are built at that point to go online and financed. Oakland Athletics President Dave Cavall has said consistently that the A's would be happy to have a development partner. The city has not provided one. They could do as I did when I worked on the 10K project for Oakland Mayor Jerry Brown. I had a development symposium. I brought friends of mine like the late Bob Hamilton of Hamilton Call and Thatcher, who passed away October 9th, among others. Vince Cardeman, a number of people that I knew in real estate. The city can do that. It hasn't done it. So it says, do the terms rely on the promise of future benefits that depend on the A's keeping their word? The city's response is the benefits will be enforced through the city through a binding enforceable development agreement. But the question is there anything in the development agreement, will there be, that ensures the construction of the other land uses? And if so, what if they're not? What's the punitive damage? What's the punishment? Is there a fine that's paid? And goes on to read that no county funds will be used to fund the $350 million in off-site infrastructure. This infrastructure will be sole responsibility of the city of Oakland and will be funded for the entirely through the city's own but-for taxes generated by the project, as well as federal, state, and regional transportation funds. Now, they're referring in part to tax increment financing, but also impact fees but the lion's share of this is tax increment financing that's generated from the project. And so if you're asking for the county to be a part of the EIFD, if you're asking for the county to be a part of it, you're asking for them to give up their share of the property tax that would normally come to them and allow it to be used for the tax increment. So once that's done, essentially you are allowing county funds, unless you're not calling it county funds. And see, that's what I'm talking about as far as the word game here. It implies something that's dishonest. If this is the case, why do you need the county? Okay. Just say, yeah, we want your money, but then show the revenue difference with and without it. I contend that the city does not need the county. And this is nothing against the county, except that this whole complexity has really slowed down the project. I know this can be done without the county. The athletics know it. And I believe city staff does too, but the mayor insists on it. What's the real reason? So it says, this is something else. It says, I've been hearing, this is not me, this is somebody that wrote this. I've been hearing that I don't even like the way it's termed. It says, I've heard that the terms proposed so far, as well as the higher terminal draft final impact report, do nothing to address the considerable impact that this project will have on the operations of the Port of Oakland. And I'm not dealing with that right now because the EIRR issue enters into some complexities that lead to more argumentative complexities. I'm dealing with the numbers and the financing and the economics. That's what I'm dealing with. The hard one. So I'm not addressing that. That's not a part of my issue. It says addition, and I'm sure, however, Mike Jacob will have a lot to say about that. This goes on to say, after being burned by Mountain Davis and other sports debacles, is this asking the county to get back in the sports business? And here I do agree with what the city wrote. The county is being asked to help finance critically needed public infrastructure, public parks, and affordable housing. Okay? It says the county is not being asked to get back into the sports business. The city and the county would have no role in the financing, ownership, or management of the proposed waterfront ballpark at Howard Terminal, which, unlike the Coliseum, would be entirely public, privately funded, maintained, and operated. That's kind of true. I just contend that the county of Alameda was never in the sports business. Even then, it was in large-scale events business and didn't understand the difference. When you're in the sports business, it means you're responsible for paying athletes and marketing and everything else. But the county never showed any real interest in that sort of thing. It should have. Is the A's proposal for a huge commercial development at the Port of Oakland that includes luxury condos and high-rise office space and happens to include a ballpark a bad deal for a county? And they go on to say it generates almost $65 million. They use, in other words, these estimates are one thing, but they need to be honest regarding the expected development for the project, and they're not. Right now, the only certainty we have is that there's going to be a ballpark. That's it. The mention regarding the 7,100 new full-time jobs and 25,000 construction jobs, according to the Bay Area Council, will result in $7.3 billion in total economic impact in the first 10 years, based on an assumption of additional development that is not set in stone by financing or development partner. It's not there. It's not there. Or, and again, is this going to be baked in the development agreement to assure that those structures are built? And how are you going to enforce that? Okay. You need to find a development partner for the athletics. Then it goes on to say, right, that if constituents are opposed to spending public dollars on private developments, should the county say no to spending Alameda County tax dollars to fund the A's project? And then it goes on to read that the public dollars generated by this private development will be expended for public benefits, not the other way around. And really, that's not true. It says under state law, EIFD funds can only be spent on affordable housing and public improvements of county community-wide significance. And folks, that is where I absolutely 100% lost it. Okay? Because it is not true. Okay? It is clearly not true. And if you want to find out that it's not true, all you have to do is pure and simply look at the enabling legislation for SB 293 Skinner. Sit back and read. And I'm going to save you the trouble by going there right now. And voila, here it is. Okay. In order to find out that what I just read at the city's website is wrong, I'm scrolling down here to read to you in this bill text, okay, in this bill text, why it's wrong, all right? And it should be understood why it's wrong. Well, because it is. And I don't understand. I continue to be baffled why this take is, they insist on this take. It's not correct at all. At all. I'm going to go all the way down through the bill text. Senate Bill 293, Chapter 762, an act to add Section 5335.82. Now let me go all the way down here to the part that is, well, first of all, let's read where this part is easiest. Here, I'm going to highlight the area that I'm about to read right here. See that? This bill would establish alternative procedures for the formation of an infrastructure financing district by the city of Oakland under these provisions. The bill will require the city council of the city of Oakland to initiate proceedings for the formation of the district by adoption of a resolution of intent to establish the district that, among other things, directs the preparation of an infrastructure financing plan. The bill will require the infrastructure financing plan to include a provision for the division of taxes, but would prohibit the division of taxes with respect to non-consenting affected taxing agencies and specified local educational agencies. That's a long way of saying, hey, look, if you're going to use the county's money, you need to get their consent. If you're going to use the school district's money, you need to get its consent. Okay? The bill will require the district board composed of specific members to hold 3 notice public hearings on the infrastructure financing plan and to conduct a protest proceeding as provided. The city has done none of this. The bill would authorize the establishment of the district if fewer than 25% of the combined number of landowners and residents in the area filing protests to the infrastructure financing plan, or if between 25% and 50% of those landowners file such a protest and the infrastructure financing plan is submitted to the voters and approved. The bill will require the district board to provide an annual report to each landowner, resident, and affected taxing entity that participates in the plan as provided. The bill would also authorize the district board to approve and issue bonds for the district by adopting a resolution that contains specified information. The bill would authorize a district formed under these provisions to finance specified projects and facilities and projects. And here it gets better. But basically what I just read to you, you must be reminded of this one thing. The only landlord in the zone as it looks right now are the Oakland A's. The Athletics would own Howard Terminal. So that gives them ultimate power over their domain. Nothing wrong with that, just pointing out a fact. Okay. The people, I'm going to go through all of this because I want you to understand the financing issue. Okay. All right. It's section 2, section 53395.82 is added to the government code to read A. This section 53395.82A, this section applies only to the city of Oakland and any infrastructure financing district proposed by the city of Oakland as described in this section. Remember, this is law, approved law. And it reads B, subdivision B. In addition to the findings and declarations in section 53395 above, the legislature further finds and declares that consolidating in a single agency the ability to capture property tax increment revenues to finance qualified public facilities in the city of Oakland will provide community-wide benefits. C. In other words, what that says there is that the city needs to make that single agency, which the city has not done to this date. It's taken years, folks, like 2. All right. For the purpose of this section, let's just see. 1, affected taxing agency means any government agency except Oakland. I think you understand that. Then the base year in the county. I'll skip over that, and I'll go all the way down to D1. It reads this. Listen. It reads a district may finance, in other words, pay for the design, purchase, construction, expansion, improvement, seismic retrofit, or rehabilitation of any real or tangible property with an estimated useful life of 15 years or longer as described in this chapter. The facilities need not be physically located within the boundaries of the district. However, any facilities financed outside the district shall have a tangible connection to the work of the district as detailed in the infrastructure financing plan, which has not been done, and adopted in accordance with subdivision E. Subdivision B of section 53395.3 shall not apply to the district, but the district shall only finance public facilities of community-wide significance that provide significant benefit to the district or the surrounding community. Then reads 2. This is where you have to read it carefully. A district shall not finance routine maintenance or repair work or the cost of ongoing operation or providing services of any kind. 3. In addition to any other project authorized by this chapter, a district form to this section may finance, listen, any of the following: highways and interchanges, ramps and bridges, arterial streets, parking facilities and transit facilities, sewage treatment and water reclamation plants and interceptor pipes, facilities for the collection and treatment of water for urban uses, flood control levees and dams, retention bases and drainage channels, childcare facilities. That's right, it says that. Libraries, parks, recreational facilities and open space, facilities for the transfer and disposal of solid waste, including transfer stations and vehicles, brownfield restoration and other environmental mitigation. See that? Other environmental mitigation. That's a broad term. It gets better. Development of such projects on a former military base, provided that the projects are consistent with the military base authority reuse plan and are approved by the military base reuse authority, if applicable. K, the repayment of the transfer of funds to a military base reuse authority pursuant to section 67851 that occurred on or after the creation of the district. L, listen to this, the acquisition, construction, or rehabilitation of housing, whether publicly or privately owned, for very low-income households and persons and families of low or moderate income, as those terms are defined in sections 50105 and 593, respectively, of the Health and Safety Code for rent or purchase. M, acquisition, construction, or repair of industrial structures for private use. In other words, the city's new agency can acquire those industrial structures, maybe for the use of the A's. That's what it reads. Okay, that's what's allowed. It's right there in black and white, folks. N, transit priority projects that are defined in section 2115 of the Public Resources Code that are located within a transit priority area, which can be differently shaped, from the Howard Terminal area. And it says, for purposes of this paragraph, transit priority area includes military base for use plan. All right. It says if the state, this is now we're going to O, if the State Air Resources Board, pursuant to Chapter 2.5, commencing with Section 65080 of Division 1 of Title 7, has accepted a metropolitan planning organization's determination that the sustainable community strategy or the alternative planning strategy would, if implemented, achieve the greenhouse gas emission reduction targets. Projects that implement a sustainable community strategy can be financed by the district. Ooh. Projects that enable, this is now P, projects that enable communities to adapt to the impacts of climate change, including but not limited to, and listen carefully, very carefully, higher average temperatures, decreased air and water quality, the spread of infectious or vector-borne diseases, other public health impacts, extreme weather events, sea level rise, flooding, heat waves, wildfires, and drought. That accomplishes every freaking thing, folks. And the point is that the Howard Terminal District can finance that. Now, do you see why I hit the ceiling and said, hey, you're not telling the truth? It goes on. Port or harbor infrastructure is defined by Section 1698 of the Harbors and Navigation Code. The acquisition, construction, or improvement of broadband internet. Wow, so we can provide, you can pay for any of that down there. And not only that, if you think about the way the law is written, you can pay for internet outside the district. Ooh. This goes on, remediation of hazardous materials, seismic and life safety improvements, rehabilitation, restoration, and preservation of structures, buildings, or other facilities with special historical significance, structural repairs and improvements to piers, seawalls and wharves, and installation of piers, removal of bay fill, stormwater management facilities, other repairs and improvements to public facilities, planning and design work that is directly related to any public facility authorized to be financed by the district, or a district in this case. Reimbursement of payments made to the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank in accordance with paragraph 5 of subdivision E of section 53395.81. Improvements which may be publicly owned to protect against potential sea level rise. Ooh. Fire stations. In other words, the Howard Terminal District can finance the construction of fire stations. And it reads that notwithstanding sections 53395.10 to 53395.25 inclusive, the district board may adapt or amend one or more infrastructure financing plans for the district according to the procedures in this section. The district shall include only those areas which may be non-contiguous that the district board finds are necessary to achieve the goals of the district, as identified in the resolution of intention adopted pursuant to this section. Let me make that clear for you. This is what I was yelling at Lauren Taylor about a long time ago, months ago, that caused me to basically get off the, just say, you know what, I'm tired, okay? I was trying to explain to him, and also Trevor Reed, that under this provision, you can have part of that tax increment financing used in East Oakland. Duh. I mean, this is all spelled out here, okay? And it's wrong to trust a consultant to tell you what the consultant is only telling you because the mayor's instructed the consultant to say certain things. Come on, get with it. read, argue. It reads the district board, Howard Terminal, may at any time add territory to the district or amend the infrastructure financing plan for the district in accordance with the same procedure for the procedures, plural, for the formation of the district and adoption of the infrastructure financing plan pursuant to this section. And then it goes on, I. Before initiating proceedings of the establishment of a district pursuant to this section, the city council shall make all the following findings. There's a need for the district, A. B. A thorough financial analysis and plan for the public facilities and districts have been completed. It has not. C. The boundaries for the district have been identified. D. Analysis and determinations have occurred regarding all the following: the projected cost of the public facilities, the parties that, in addition to the city, will contribute to the cost of constructing the public facilities, whether and to the extent to which development are facilitated by the district will generate economic benefits to the city, including but not limited to participation in any revenue stream to be generated by any project on city-owned property, or community benefits such as public open space or affordable housing. 2. Upon making the findings required by paragraph 1, the city council may initiate proceedings for the establishment of a district by adopting a resolution of intention to establish the proposed district, which will do all the following: A. State that an infrastructure financing district is proposed to be established and describes the boundaries of the proposed district. The boundaries may be described by reference to a map on a file in the office of the city clerk or the city council. Is that there yet? I don't know that it is. B. Describe the type of public facilities proposed to be financed by the district. That's B, excuse me. C. State that some or all of the tax increment of the incremental property tax revenue from Oakland and at some or all affected taxing agencies within the district, but none of the local education agencies, may be used to finance these public facilities. Like, you're not do that with the county, okay? You better be ready to do that. Okay? D. State the need for the district, excuse me, and identify the goals that the district proposes to achieve. E. Direct the preparation of a proposed infrastructure financing plan. 3. The city council shall direct the city clerk to make a copy of the resolution of intention to any affected taxing agencies. 4. The proposed infrastructure financing plan, still not done, shall be consistent with the general plan of Oakland as amended from time to time, and shall include all the following: a map and a legal description of the proposed district, a description of public facilities required to serve the district, including those to be provided by the private sector, those to be provided by government entities without assistance under the chapter, those public facilities to be financed with assistance from the proposed district, and those to be provided jointly. The description shall include the proposed location, timing, purpose, and projected costs of the public facilities. C. A financing section shall contain all the following: a provision that specifies the maximum portion of the incremental tax revenue of Oakland. Like I keep saying here, you 1.6 billion. This is right, all that, right? The calculations that I made, all right, and of any affected taxing entity proposed to be committed to the district, and affirms that the plan will not allocate any portion of the incremental tax revenue of the local education agencies to the district. The portion need not be the same for all affecting taxing agencies. The portion may change over time. Limitations on the use of levy taxes allocated to and collected by the district that provide that incremental tax revenues or tax increment financing revenue allocated to a district must be used for purposes authorized under this section, which are broad, as you've learned. Okay. 3, a projection of the amount of tax increment financing revenue or incremental tax revenues, as it reads, expected to be received by the district. A projection. I haven't seen the projection. Have you? I made them. Okay. But hey, I've had this for some time. Many times over this project's history, I haven't seen jack from the city. The mayor says there are drafts from flying around. The law calls for this. See another reason why I hit the ceiling? Okay. A projection of the amount of incremental tax revenues expected to be received by the district, assuming a district receives incremental tax revenues for a period no later than 45 years after Oakland projects the district will have received $100,000 in incremental tax revenues under this chapter. In the event, and you know what? The minute they start construction, boom, there you go. Boom. Whew. In the event that the district board divides the district into multiple project areas, the projection of the amount of incremental tax revenue expected to be received by the district should be calculated separately for each project area. Projected sources of financing for the public facilities to be assisted by the district, including debt to be repaid with incremental tax revenues, projected revenues from future leases, sales, or other transfers of any interest in land. A limitation on the aggregate number of dollars levied, taxes that may be divided and allocated to the district. And this goes on. Read all of this because this is a very long tome. All right? And it's very detailed. But what it does in its total is outline all the steps needed to be taken to make the Howard Terminal Enhanced Infrastructure Financing District a reality. If you want to check and see where the city is at, all you have to do is go through and ask questions. Did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? And the city should have a document that breaks out these sections and explains where the city is at. If the county's not asking for that, what the county should do is approve the project, but with the provisos that, hey, look, you have to give us a progress report here. In other words, force the city to do its work. Force the city to do the work of, as they might say on the street vernacular, doing the project right. And my issue, and what spurred me to write the letter that I did, is that, as you can see, the city has not done that. And the city has played a smoke and mirrors strategy. I'm not telling you, the public, the truth regarding the project. And guess what, folks? There's nothing wrong with the truth. There's nothing bad about it. Nothing. Oakland A's President Dave Cavall should be quite concerned that this isn't communicated. And with what I just read, why would anybody be fool enough to leave this kind of project and go anywhere else? Major League Baseball needs to see this. Because, look, I'm not going to say you're not going to get anything like this in Las Vegas parlance. You will have a shorter development time frame. But in terms of the subsidy provisions and what they allow the athletics to do, as well as development partners, you're not going to see that in Nevada unless you use this legislation as a model for something you want to get in Nevada, and that's an entirely other story. Is that possible? Maybe. Have they done it? To my knowledge, no. So right now, this puts Oakland further ahead, I think, than many people really understand. And I personally continue to be chafed by not being allowed by everybody at the town hall meeting on the 20th who was in a position to allow it like Carl Chan, for example, to explain to the 90 people in attendance what tax increment financing is, how it's calculated, and how it can be used, not just to build Howard Terminal and what it'll be used for there, but to improve their lives and their needs in the community. I was denied that ability, that permission. And because they didn't want anyone to know of what money was coming out of it, let alone what it could be used for. Not a good way to roll. All right, folks. I'll see you. Subscribe to Zenny62 and bookmark oaklandnewsnow.com. That is this broadcast.